turn it over to Sasha.
You look beautiful. Well, this is quite a... All right,
And then we'll disappear
Do you want
into that.
anything at all?
Okay, my name is Malphine Fogel. I'm Mark's mother, and you've all heard about Mark. He's been wrongfully detained, and since he's been wrongfully detained, he's denied our family our rights. Mark was arrested on August 14th of 2021. Brittany Griner was arrested 6 months later on February 17th. Both were charged under the same statutes with bringing forms of marijuana into Russia. On May 3rd, 2.5 months after her arrest, Brittany Griner was designated as wrongfully detained. Mark is going on 3 years in prison and has not been designated as wrongfully detained yet. Mark and our family are not being given the same rights and protections as Brittany and her family. I have not been informed why Mark has not been designated as wrongfully detained. Secretary Blinken has not given me a legitimate reason for Mark being treated differently than Brittany Griner. Mark meets 8 of the 11 criteria of the Levinson Act. I don't want to get into the specifics here, and I'm not an expert on that. Under Mark's current circumstances, Blinken and the Biden administration have not acknowledged him nor his family. Most importantly, the Biden administration has made it very clear that Mark has no value to America, and therefore Russia is not motivated to release him. Conversely, Brittany Griner received a wrongfully detained designation from Blinken, signaling Russia that the U.S. valued her return. Being wrongfully detained gives the American prisoner legally recognized status and prioritization by the United States. It is the basis to call for the release of Mark both in America, where our family can be given community support, and abroad, where the foreign country and the world are made aware of American commitment to the prisoner and the prisoner feels reinforcement, and it gets hope from that. Biden repeatedly referenced Brittany Griner as wrongfully detained and routinely contacted her family. Brittany and her family discussed how these efforts sustained them. We have never had contact, and we need that sustenance just like they do. Brittany and her family were also provided a myriad of tangible financial and medical resources via the wrongfully detained whole of government commitment to return. Mark being relegated to the Consular Affairs Division at the State Department. Financial resources include funding for travel, additional, consistent, and higher-level communication, and legal support among various federal agencies for families, additional physical and psychological health care. And I think that's all important. We really have no way of knowing what his physical condition is. I have an idea that it has slipped a lot since he's been in there. And all of this was provided to Griner. Most importantly, Mark, over almost 3 years, it is financially and mentally crippling to regular people like us. State has said nothing to us about Mark's wrongfully detained designation for almost 3 years. It's on the Secretary's desk as their stock answer. I have reached out directly to Blinken and Biden about designating Mark as wrongfully detained. Written letters asked to meet with them through their staff and members of Congress. There has never been an acknowledgement of any outreach at all. And I want to add here, I am so disappointed because I thought if Jill Biden knows about the circumstances, she would have made a little bit of an effort to support a fellow teacher. That teaching was all important to Mark, and he gave his heart and soul to it. The department has written that while the Secretary considers the Levinson Act when designating someone as wrongfully detained, the Secretary has the ultimate authority to determine Mark's case. The family finds the statement ironic, given that America is a democracy, yet the Fogels have been denied due process regarding being informed and provided reasoning on why Mark, after almost 3 years, has not received this designation, while Brittany Griner received it after 2.5 months. If Secretary Blinken wants to assume the ultimate authority to deny Mark Fogel a life-saving designation while giving it freely to Griner under parallel circumstances, the founding principles of our nation and our Constitution call on him to explain why. The State Department did, however, hold a top-secret briefing with Senators Casey and Fetterman and Congressman Kelly, DeLuzio, Boyle, and Reschenthaler. The first one on Mark specifically after they had been requesting one for almost 3 years. Our family was not informed it would take place. We were not informed that was what was said, even though Mark and all of us of his core family had signed full permission for it. Our man trust, and we can. Let's see. The important thing to remember here is to do no harm to Mark. We must not put out anything that will make Mark's current circumstances harder, such as when Mark was convicted, his sentence included confinement to a hard labor prison camp. When the family repeated this to the press, there was some type of negative feedback, retribution, punishment inflicted on Mark, and he asked that this not be repeated. I seek to compel Secretary Blinken to designate my son Mark Fogel as wrongfully detained, as he did Brittany Griner. I ask the press to investigate Mark's case with the State Department and not stop until you get answers. The Levinson Act is a result of the press reporting on Bob Levinson when the CIA State Department lied and stonewalled his family. The Fogels asked for the media to get the truth from the State Department and to bring Mark home. Also, ask the press to continue writing about Mark. We have 3 goals. Reach President Biden and have him say Mark Fogel's name, which I have never heard him say. Have President Biden declare Mark Fogel as wrongfully detained. Bring Mark Fogel home in the next prisoner swap with Russia. And please include Mark Fogel's net on all media, that's .net, on all the media stories. So the important thing is, do no harm to Mark. Okay, the things to remember. Say Mark Fogel's name. Designate Mark Fogel as wrongfully detained, like Brittany Griner. Bring Mark Fogel home in the next prisoner swap. And it's Gershwin. We want it to say Gershwin, Whalen, and Fogel, particularly Fogel. Well, I want to say how much we appreciate what all the press has done, all the media. They have been more than fair and always on the spot. They don't seem to stint on their time or talent, and it's something that we take for granted in this country, but it's so important, and we appreciate every one of you.
Yeah, I know you do. I know everybody here, even there at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, they ran your first op-ed, and we have WTAE, we have, of course, Laura, and the Eagle, and the Tribune. I mean, I know you tell me every day how appreciative you are, so thank you.
We are. And, we just want everybody to talk about it and to mention Mark whenever possible. Just mention his name. He probably wouldn't like that, but it's a we need to do it. I mean, he has to be as well known as Brittany Griner, even though he's not a basketball player. So,
well, I know nothing brightens the day more than having your neighbor come over and bringing that paper here.
Oh, yeah, good neighbors. And very good.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Fogel. I am the sister of Mark. We are eager to have him designated as wrongfully detained. We believe that that is the right thing for the government to do for us, for the Fogel family, for Mark. I hope that this declaration is seriously taken. It's been 3 years now, and it's time for him to come home. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Phillips, and my firm, Babs Callan, represents Mrs. Fogel in the lawsuit she filed earlier this week against Secretary Blinken and the Department of State. I'm joined by my colleagues today, Joseph Schaefer and Morgan Hubbard. We are very proud and honored to be a part of the efforts being made to bring Mark Fogel home. Congress passed the Levinson Act to establish procedures that address the wrongful detainment of United States nationals abroad. Congress understood that it was important to also provide support for family members of those wrongfully detained and included provisions for that support in the Levinson Act. The Act requires the Secretary of State to review as expeditiously as possible the cases of United States nationals detained abroad to determine if there is credible information that they have been detained unlawfully or wrongfully. Mrs. Fogel's complaint sets forth many of the facts that establish that there is credible information that Mark Fogel is wrongfully detained and should be designated as such. The complaint asserts 4 claims. A mandamus claim that asks the court to order Secretary Blinken to conduct his review pursuant to his statutory obligations. An equal protection claim that Mark Fogel's family has been treated differently by Secretary Blinken, who has designated similarly situated Americans as wrongfully detained, but not Mark Fogel. Mrs. Fogel asserts a due process claim pursuant to her rights guaranteed to her under the Constitution of the United States. And finally, any decision to not designate Mark Fogel as wrongfully detained be set aside as a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Mrs. Fogel is 95 years old, and she has been fighting for her son's release for almost 3 years. Filing this lawsuit was a necessary next step in that fight, and we will aggressively litigate this lawsuit, and we sincerely hope it will help Ms. Fogel see her son again. Thank you.
The kids. Jay said, Sasha, I'll say if you're hard.
The railway sort of standing. That's where you first you have to do that.
My name is Sasha Phillips, and together with Randy Bregman, I have been representing Fogel's family for close to 3 years now in their plight to bring Mark home. And over those 3 years, unfortunately, I have watched the families being turned away from the really important resources that should be available to them under the law and frankly under common decency. I'll give you an example of a resource that we were able to supplement. We've reached out. There's a mural in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and this mural contains faces of all Americans who have been detained abroad. The purpose for this mural is for them to be seen, for anybody who walks by to see their faces, to learn their names, and to signal to the world, to the United States, and to everybody who sees this mural that they're not forgotten, that the U.S. government is fighting for their return. When we reached out to the organization that runs this mural and asked to include Mark's face on the mural, we got a no, because Mark was not officially designated as wrongfully detained. All of those faces that are seen and heard are on that wall, and Mark's is not among them. But that's the resource we decided we could supplement and recreate on our own. And so a year ago, we got over 100 artists, led by Tom Mosser. He is a local legend and a fantastic artist. We've organized the Make a Mark art advocacy event. And we've had over 100 artists
produce artwork. You see some of those around this room and outside today. Yelena Lam, Janik Goldberg are out there. We have Svetlana Trofimova's piece right here. Over 100 artists produce artwork in support of Mark, in support of Mark's family. And we were not shy, including other wrongfully detained Americans in this exhibit, because we believe that every single one of them should return to their family. That's the courtesy that was not extended to us. That's a silly example of the resource where we can do things, we will do them. We can step in and produce the same for Mark. Unfortunately, not every resource is like that. And the U.S. government, Biden administration, and the Department of State absolutely have to step in and have to do their job for Mark to come home. Those are the resources we're saying were unjustly denied to us. Mr. Phillips talked about the complaint just now, and he set forth the claims that the complaint raises. As an attachment to this complaint is a report that the Department of State produced in response to a Congress request to know what's going on in Mark's case, why he hasn't been designated as wrongfully detained, and where we are in this process. The report that we received and that is attached to the complaint is inadequate, to say the least. We are addressing those inadequacies in a response to the Department of State today. The report is missing key facts. It's misrepresenting the articles under which Mark was charged. It misses the number of appeals that he has filed. It also misses the fact that none of those are currently pending. More importantly, it mentions certain information bases without disclosing what that information is. It quotes from sources that are not listed in the report. It attributes to Mark things that he has not said or done. We're going to challenge every single one of those, and we're going to present information, proof to the State Department. And we're going to request them to withdraw this report and reissue a report consistently with facts and the current law. So we're going to keep doing what we can for Mark and for Mark's family. What we ask the State Department, the Biden administration, and the U.S. government is to do what they can only do for Mark's family. And we're going to ask every single one of you to keep putting Mark's name out there, to make sure that just like those people, they're in that mural in Georgetown, he is seen and he is not forgotten. And his family is not denied the resources that they should have under the law. I'm going to turn back to you, Mrs. Fogel, if you would like to ask for certain things or to say a few words in conclusion. We would all love to hear them.
Well, of course, first and foremost, we have to get him unlawfully detained, that we have to get that classification. And as I understand it, until that happens, nothing else is going to proceed. So we have to keep putting pressure on the State Department. And I guess the only way we can do that is either to write, or you people write stories and shame them into doing it. So that's the main thing, get him designated that way. And also, we would like to have some information from the State Department as to what's going on. We have never, ever received anything from them. And I know that President Biden talked to Whalen. As soon as Brittany Griner was arrested, he said, we're getting her out, and they did. And we don't think they've made the effort to get Mark out. And he, as we all know, he's as important as anyone else on the planet. And our only hope is that you people keep the pressure up and get him named in every news article that you can, and get the government to take notice.
Do you want to open it up to questions then? Do you want to see that?
Yeah, if there's anybody that wants to ask any questions about Mark, about when he set fire across the street, we have a lot of them. But,
For sure want to answer that question.
yeah, now
Now we want to know.
yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about the fire.
Well, he must have been 6 or 7 years old, and he and a little boy across the street were playing with matches. And at that time, there was no house built there; it was just a bunch of weeds. And so they played with matches and started a fire, and we ended up having to call the fire department. But I don't know if he ever played with matches after that again. But also, there's a little creek down over the hill, so all the kids would go down there and fish. And it was like Tom Sawyer. He just would get there with this make-believe pole, and they'd walk down over the hill and fish for minnows. I used to look for minnows. But Mark was always a very soft-spoken, kind of quiet kid, and my sister can attest to that. He always listened to what you had to say, and then he did what he wanted to do. He always was respectful and listened to us, and we have found out over the years that there were many times he played hooky at our summer place in East Brady. And not too long ago, there was a permanent resident down there told me about this red Volkswagen that kept appearing during the daytime at the cottage. And we found out, of course, this was Mark's friend. And they spent I think they spent a lot of time. And he told me after we sold the place, he could never even look at it. If he drove past it, he had to turn his head. There were too many memories there. But he was always really a thoughtful, very sentimental kind of person. Don't you think, Lydia?
Yes.
He was always... and remembered birthdays. Even now, he's in prison, and my sister's grandson is having some serious health problems. And Mark rarely calls if he doesn't ask how Dominic is doing. So he still is very, very connected with the family, as much as it can be. And he doesn't want pity. I think he feels that he's got to get out of this himself, and he's trying. I think, he did have a class. He started an English class in the prison. I guess most of the inmates there are young Russians, and they were all so anxious to learn the English language. So Mark started these classes, and I think he said he had about 12 men show up, and they had a routine. It was always at a designated time, and he did that for, I think, 6 months, and then the powers that be said he had to stop. And I don't know why. Maybe they thought these guys were learning too much English, and they weren't understanding them. But anyway, he stopped. But he said every once in a while they'll corner him, and they'll say, "How do you say this?" or "How do you say that?" But he's really missing his family. Nothing can ever replace his son, his wife and sons, and he, I'm sure he is in despairs many, many times during the day because of the situation they're in, and he's counting on all of us to help him out. There's no other way. Again, I ask you, write whatever you can about him. He's a good man. I can't imagine some of the letters that his students wrote after they graduated, and they went into a lot of trouble. And I know that Ambassador McFall was actually pretty good friends with Mark, and he and Jane went to the ballets and different things that the Russian theater had to offer. And McFall has done everything he can do. Of course, he's the ex-ambassador now, but he has really gone to bat for Mark. And a lot of the the a student, and he has friends that he had from grade school when they played basketball in the Christian school in 6th grade, and they're still his best friends. So that tells you how loyal he is. And he's a good person, and he needs to go, and we need for him to get home.
You got a question?
Talk about the artwork that's in front of the house.
The artwork that's on site.
Yeah.
But we saw it at the art show, but I'm not sure what you want me to do.
What's the significance of it? Why is it there?
Oh, well, because they put him on a mural.
Oh, okay.
So we have to do the next best thing, and that's Sasha's doing, I'm sure. And we're going to have to keep working on the mural, too.
Well, we'll work on the mural for sure, but also the artwork that you have right here in the room and also
Yes.
outside is there were over 100 of local Pittsburgh and national artists that came on a whim, and the lead time into this Make a Mark show was actually really short. So to watch all these artists take a lot of time to create a concept and then execute it and to do all this artwork and everything like that. People came together in a matter of 3 weeks or less. And a lot of them created this artwork. We didn't just have artists. We had medical doctors. We had lawyers.
Dentists.
Yeah,
Keys
absolutely.
with the dentist.
Dentists. Yes, we had a dentist submit their artwork. We had psychiatrists. We had therapists. We had attorneys. That's the Make a Mark piece that I created, and then certainly put it together with Malphine.
That's great.
But this was in part because we couldn't be on that mural, yes. But at the same time, is to demonstrate to Mark's family that they are seen, they're loved, there's so much support to them in the community.
Oh.
And so many people, those who know Mark, those who don't know Mark, are willing to take up any task whatsoever. You know, medical doctors are ready to become artists just to show Mark and just to show his family that he is wanted back, that he is loved, that he is supported, and to show to the United States government that we absolutely want to bring him back. We want to the U.S. government to do what they need to do.
Anything else you want to tell people about Mark? If Mark was here right now, what's the first thing he'd do?
He would thank everybody here, believe me. He would thank everybody. I think he appreciates every effort that we make, and he always inquires about it. At first, he was kind of embarrassed by it, but now he relishes it, and he wants his name out there, and he wants everybody to know he's there and fighting. And, the other way we can do it is with press.
Would he go to the refrigerator first before he?
Oh, when he came down.
Or would he say, "Do it"?
The first thing he did, of course, was go to the refrigerator. The second thing was he asked for ibuprofen. He always was in pain. And, we never appreciated it because he did not talk about it. But if we were having dinner, halfway dinner, he would get up and kind of squirm around and making everybody uncomfortable. But he would squirm around for a while, and the first thing you know, he was lying on the floor here because he cannot sit for any period of time. Didn't matter whether it was a soft chair or hard chair or whatever. The pain he has is real. And I asked him about it not long ago in the conversation. And I said, well, how is your back? You never tell us anything about it. He said, Mom, it's the same as it has been for the last 33 years. So his injury started when he was a kid, and they just deteriorated as he aged. And, everybody knows he's had 3 serious operations. The last 2 were done by the surgeon that does these sports figures in Pittsburgh. And, his only relief is to lie down or stand up. And when he taught at his class, he had a stand-up desk. He could not sit. So, he didn't complain about it. I don't think he wanted particularly to call attention to it, but it was there and it was obvious.
Mrs. Fogel. Mrs. Fogel, can you talk a little bit about how Mark describes his day in, day out routine, if what you know about it?
Well, he never criticizes it. He's allowed to go out, and there is a structure on the premises that they use as a church. There's nothing in it, he said, except an altar and candles. And he goes there a couple times a day when he can, because walking is the one thing he can do. And he goes to this church, and I'm sure he prays harder than he ever did in his entire life, because he wasn't that religious. But this has really brought everything to the fore, and he, I think he tries to make the best of it. He has gotten, my daughter Ann was able to get him some books from a bookstore, which was the only way they could get books to him, and I think that has stopped. But they would only approve books that were written by Russians or about Russia. So she sent him Dr. Zhivago and Anna Karenina, and I can't remember. War and Peace, I think he had hard on that one. But he said he's read Moby Dick. She sent him that one, and he said he's read them over and over. And it's difficult because he has no English literature to read. And I think he's learned some Russian, but I think it would take a long, long time to be fluent in Russian. And he does have a Russian lawyer who speaks English. And the American Embassy is supposed to send somebody there. I think it's once every quarter, but they haven't always done that. The trip there is about 5 or 6 hours by car, and it's a bad road, so it involves staying overnight. And but he has gotten all kinds of mail, and the lawyer has told him that it's there are boxes of mail, but they've never given him his mail. And I guess one of the reasons is because every piece has to be translated into Russian. They probably don't have the personnel to do that. I don't know, but he has not gotten any mail since they were Christmas cards and Christmas letters. But he does get to walk, and he said he has a little plot of ground. He said it's about 6 by 6 feet. And they gave him some seeds, and he planted the carrots and radishes and some kind of root-type vegetables. But he said he can't carry water to the garden. There's no hose, so he has to depend on somebody else to water the plants for him. And every once in a while, people get packages. And the one time when I talked to him, somebody had sent dried red tomatoes. And so he said, we tried to make sauce out of it. They added water, and they only have a microwave. And but he said, they ate it. And he really has not complained very much. He said the people there are nice. The inmates are nice. Most of them are young men. I don't know what they're there for. I never asked him. But he makes the best. He's making the best of the situation. He walks. That's the one thing he can do is walk. And he breathes whatever he can grab. And it's pretty boring, he said. Really boring. He always wants to know everything that's happening here, and particularly the sports, the Pittsburgh sports. And Butler has had some really good runners. And so he always asks about this. Drew Griffiths is his name. And you can't give him enough detail. It doesn't matter how minuscule. He wants to hear. He always, I think he laments the fact that he's in this situation, and he regrets so much because it has really harmed his family. And, he's missed so much. He missed the kids' college graduation and moving, just so many things that you don't even think of as being important, but they've become very important when you're away from the home. And so he's hoping that we can do something, he has to depend on us. So we're trying, especially Vicky. Everybody's been grateful. He's grateful, and I'll tell him all about it. But I remember him talking about Russia, and people wondered why he went to Russia to teach. He had taught all over the world, and he was always curious about Russia. And his wife then got teaching credentials. She had a degree in chemistry, but she got teaching credentials, and they got this position, and they really liked it. They liked going to the ballet russe, and he said in the spring, when the lilacs were out, he said you could just smell lilacs all over Moscow. And he said they utilize every little space of green they have, and they make little dog parks out of them, or just little parks where you can sit. So it's not all as dreary as lots of us think of Russia. The springs must be fantastic. And of course, he said the winters are too long and nothing's going to change that. But he also said about Russia that when they have snow in the winter, he said there are women go out there with shovels. And he said they clean those streets out like you would not believe. He said they're always passable, and they're mostly women that do the work. And very efficient in a lot of ways.
He had a good experience there.
Yeah,
With the family.
yeah. I think that he felt it was a good experience. You know, this was going to be their last year, and they were really looking forward to coming home and doing normal things. But you know, that's 3 years ago. So we need to do something to get him out. We got to get Blinken to make a statement, and you know, I don't know how you can stress it enough, because he's our only hope. So we have to keep the press going. I just hope they read the story.
You have a question here that goes back to, you wanted to know why can't Warwick water his garden. Is it because he cannot carry it? Or
Well, he can't lift it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody was always willing to do it.
It's a bucket or something.
Yeah. But he said it took like until the end of May or the 1st of June to even see dirt, because everything is covered with snow and ice. And then he said a few weeks ago, around the 1st of June, he actually saw browns. And but I think he has a good relationship with the other people in the prison, and I think he really watches his P's and Q's. And he just does not want us to say anything detrimental to the Russian government, because I'm sure all his phone calls are monitored.
Can I ask you, just to, if you wouldn't mind, just everyone here knows Mark's story or his, everybody knows what happened to Mark, but can you just reiterate the basics of what happened to Mark? What his situation is, you know, what he was charged of, what happened.
Okay, so when he went to there for first of all, up until he was arrested, they had diplomatic immunity, so they could go in and out. He brought cheese and salami and all kinds of stuff into Russia. Nobody even checked. And this time when they went, they had 2 lines. One was stuff that had to be addressed in the suitcase, and then the other line. And he said they never had checked his luggage before, and they took the quicker line. And of course they stopped him, and he had 7 grams of marijuana that had been, of course, prescribed for him. And it seems, as I said, when he came in the house, he always went to the refrigerator, and then he asked for ibuprofen because he needed relief. And I think he depended on that, and they found the marijuana and pulled him aside. And his wife, they were just scared to death. But I think he thought, when they see that I have the prescription for this, it's medicine. But they didn't they didn't distinguish whether it was medicine or just marijuana for pleasure. So anyway, they pulled him aside, and the first few months, he was in places called CISOs. Where's Sasha? CISOs, do you know what that is?
Yes, it's a preliminary detention center where they normally hold people before the trial.
Okay, well, they had placed him in a number of CISOs. And I think he was really afraid when they did send him to the prison that what it was going to be like. He had no idea. You'd read horror stories.
And
But he has never really complained. The only thing he said to me one time, not too long ago, he said, "I wish I could sleep in a place where somebody's not 15 feet away from me." So it must be crowded. But as far as, he goes on as much as he can. I ask him if he has everything he needs. We had sent him ibuprofen, wool socks, different things that we thought he might use. And he eventually did get those. It probably took maybe a year. I don't know how long it took. But it's pretty erratic. And I think the embassy is not as thoughtful as it could be, and it's not as important to them, and it's probably a lot of trouble to go to see him. But he doesn't see too much of him, but he has a very nice Russian lawyer, and he speaks good English, and he always enjoys seeing. Somebody got in to see him, one of his old students, Collins, I think was his name. I don't know how he did that, but he did get to see him. And he said that he thought he didn't look bad. He has trouble. His leg is affected by his back situation. So he said his left leg had atrophied because he's probably not getting the physical therapy that he needs. And I'm sure that, when he gets home, you'll probably be able to tell it. But he does exercises. It's the one thing he can do. And he walks and reads whenever he can find something to read, but it's pretty boring.
Well, I think one of the problems is that his family were not able to get the medical records that they have requested from the correction system. And so Mark's medical doctor, his treating physician who attended to Mark while Mark was still here in Pennsylvania, just based on bits and pieces of the information that the family has been able to get, was able to piece a pretty grim picture about Mark's health and how he's doing physically and also mentally, just on scribbles of medical records or whatever that he's been treated with that the family has been able to obtain. And as much as Mark is always brave and positive and does not want to upset his family.
Yeah. He's always very careful about not saying anything he knows it's going to upset the family, but we know what's going on, But he did say when he first went in there, they started giving him injections. They had given him 17 injections. He didn't know what they were. He didn't know how to, he didn't really know if they were being spaced, particularly, or just it was haphazard. They gave him injections. And a couple of times he was in a hospital. But this hospital, he said, is more like a clinic. And, of course, he has no translators. And he doesn't know what, it's all...
He's given some medication. He does not know what that medication is. He's not explained anything. From what we understand, there's not a qualified physician there who can actually issue a diagnosis and treat adequately, provide the treatment that he needs. On a couple of occasions, he was able to communicate to his family what some of those medications were or what he thought they were. Mm-hmm. And so we did our research and found out that the shots that we thought he was getting do cause serious side effects, considering the long list of physical ailments that he has. He has since received hundreds of shots and hundreds of pills, which he has no idea what they are.
He doesn't know what they are.
No one explains it. No one translates this to him. He is not able to speak Russian enough to understand medical terms and names of these drugs.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know how.
By bringing him back.
By bringing him back. We have to get him home. No, before more damage is done.
Yeah, that's one thing, and you and I've talked about this, but I know this is hard for you, but I'd really like you to talk about the impact this has had to you in the family, because I know it's hard.
Well, yeah.
I really, but it's because this hasn't, it just impacted Mark. It is really, and I know you're looking at Anne. This is really, I wouldn't say ruined his family, but it has really changed.
Well, you never get used to it. I'm calling every male Mark. If my son-in-law's here, I call him Mark.
I know it's hard. I just think people need to understand that this is,
Yeah. And he really tries to put a good face on it.
and so
He tries to make jokes, and he asks about every dumb little thing. But it's important for him to have that connection.
And so do you. I mean, you don't like to talk about you. You get mad when your pictures in the paper. You say it's not about you, but I think you do need to express to people how difficult this has been for you and the boys.
And a lot of people, if I'm around somebody, they hesitate to talk about it. I want to talk about it. But they think they're doing me a favor by not bringing it.
And to the degree, and I think you just need to let people know how hard this has been and what it means to you. Get it done.
It's been hard on Lisa and Ann and his boys. And, they're having some struggles. They don't really know. They don't know how to approach this. They don't want to be ashamed of their dad. But they can't be too proud either because he's in prison.
But again, Brittany's family was what we talked about last night, and I think if you could express that with the take designation and this country standing behind him, what a difference that would make to two boys who are in their mid-20s.
Yeah, they need to know that he's an honorable man. He is. And he did things out of pain, and they were legal. And, it's been really hard for the boys. And, of course, he's missed so much of their lives. 3 years is a long time when you're, teenage years. And he talks to them fairly often. And the youngest one seems to be more acceptable. Ethan holds back a little bit, the oldest one.
So what do you think having the government stand behind the road?
Yes, if the government would stand behind him, that would change the whole atmosphere for those boys, particularly for his immediate family. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I know, but they need that reassurance. And, short of, tripping Biden or somebody, getting him to listen, I don't know how we're going to get him to comment even.
But I think that's important for people to hear. For the Sobel name, for two young men, for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Would be living with this.
And at the very beginning, they went into that school with dogs. And we all know now that they had been trying to take down that school for years. And, I mean, they made the most out of this. And
you mean the Russians went into the school looking for drugs in Mark's office?
I can't imagine the fear and the despair that Mark must have felt when that happened. Because I'm sure he didn't think it was, earth-shaking. But they made it that way.
Can you talk about the school and how that was a target?
Well, they said that, there's a theory that there was an ex-teacher who had been fired, who had been approached about trying to do something about that school. And of course, Mark said they had 17 different languages spoken in his class. They were from all over the world, and these kids were scared. They were, they were out of their element. And I think Mark really made them feel good. In fact, I wish I could read you some of his letters that his students had written to him, because they said he made them feel like they were part of the class, and they were a family, and they just, Mark said they were such a nice bunch of kids. I don't think he ever had any trouble. I don't think they ever had any kind of discipline problems, or maybe I'm overstating it. I don't know, but it seems like they were really nice kids, and they wrote that. Did you see that one letter?
Yeah, it's out there. I think all around.
Right here.
Yeah.
Did you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. This is from one of his students after graduation. He said, as one brave aforementioned doctor, priest, and speaker said, I have a dream, and I do have a dream for you, to continue bringing joy and happiness as well as wisdom to the lives of as many people as possible. You are not only a history, geography, and political science teacher, but you are a mentor and an idol for many people, both students and teachers. This kid was very wordy. He said, the insightful, judicious, sagacious wisdom was always pouring out of your cluttered room. And I was in his room. He said, and it was cluttered. And he had pictures. I remember a picture of Nehru just pasted on the walls, and pictures of all the political people of that era, and clutter. I mean, I don't know how he found anything. But anyway. Let's see. The wisdom was always pouring out of your cluttered room. Of course, it's hard to read, mixed with a healthy dose of humor and sometimes with an overdose of unreasonable optimism, based on lack of objectivity, verifiable evidence. Either way, every time I would want any type of elucidation, enlightenment, or just an interesting encounter, I knew that your room is the one to visit. And for this, I thank you. I always liked, he's talking about another teacher, and he said, I was heartbroken, let's see. But as a constructive two-way dialogue based on strong personal beliefs, basically the ability to talk with other people, to talk honestly, transparently, and with honor, even though we do have our differences. Though this year I have gained the utmost, this is really great, respect for you, and as a teacher, and as a person. Although you cannot deny that I am the only loquacious person in here. It's pretty long. I'm going to skip some of this. But he says, with this World War II picture, Cold War picture of Europe, I wish the best for you, Mr. Fogel, to your family, and so on and so forth. May this not only remind you about Jan, the Polish guy, that's who's writing this, but also about the AAS, your years in here, as well as your enormously positive impact on the community based on the values that you have defended and spread. He said, I would like to thank you for everything. But it's pretty long, but it was very genuine. And there were so many of these letters. Jane has most of them, but she'd given me this because it was so unusual.
One was there.
But that took a lot of time for your,
Does anybody have any other questions, or is this Fogel?
Good.
One more?
This is one of the hardest assignments for Westic, and that's Russia.
That what?
This is one of the hardest assignments on Saturday for U.S. diplomats is Russia.
Yeah.
They're asked everywhere they go.
Right.
Can you talk a bit about? I mean, I don't know, I imagine many of them could only do that posting because they knew their kids were at a good school. Yeah,
Right.
having a terrible job.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that? What the service that he provided is?
I know that he had an impact on all the students he had, and he taught there for 9 years. This is his 10th year, and when they had we had a rally in Washington D.C. There were a lot of students came from California to that rally, and they came and spoke to me, and just they were so genuine, and really, they're really upset about what's happened, and I think a lot of them would do whatever they could. If somebody said, you do this, I'd do it. Most of them would do it. But the 5 of them were here to do this documentary, and they were really nice, intelligent kids. But I think that the experience, he wouldn't have given up that experience for anything. I think he really was glad he got into that. And it looks like his son is going to do the same thing. He's now teaching in Mexico, his oldest boy. And in fact, he'll be coming home in a few days. But it was all in all, it was a good experience. I don't think they'd change anything. And, it should not have ended this way. But hopefully something good will still come of it. It's not over yet.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just struck with this. Your principal complaints are with the State Department.
Right.
But Mark is someone who was teaching the very people who work with their kids.
Right. They were all the children of diplomats, ambassadors, and I think it is very well regarded by their parents. So I don't know why they have just stonewalled. They've stonewalled this, and I don't know why. Oh, hi, Lisa. Oh, perfect time already. So we got a crew here.
We're sort of winding up, but I did want to see if Anne wanted to say anything and Lisa wanted to say anything. Does anybody have any more questions for Malphine? And I know we have a public service announcement here. Sasha, do we need to do anything for Anne?
No, I think she is on if she wants to go.
Anne, would you like to say anything?
And it's on this.
I don't want to say it.
I wanted to address that last question of the importance of international school teachers and the role that they play in our foreign policy. As you pointed out, diplomats are very unlikely to take positions overseas if they cannot take their families with them and if they cannot educate their children. They provide an integral service to the U.S. State Department. And I also feel that the level of teaching that my brother teaches at, he is including perspectives of a myriad number of countries, and it I think it feeds him, but it also feeds his students. His students are incredibly prepared for the world and also for potentially future diplomatic positions as well. They grew up in that world, and because of teachers like my brother, they understand how the complexities and the nuances of world politics. He has given a great deal, far more that he's recognized for. Teachers aren't recognized. And it's time that the First Lady steps up.
Does she even know about Mark? I think she would if she knew about Mark. But I think a lot of these diplomats are very good. These teachers are very, very good. But I have to say, I think Mark was one of the best. And according to his students, I think he was. They thought so too. He loved what he did.
That
Are you there?
Yes, I my passions are so great that it's sometimes hard for me to even begin. It's all so incredibly overwhelming. The situation in general, and
you need to.
we're on our knees. We are on our knees. I'll
We
answer
have to
it.
depend. We have to depend on the State Department and our leaders to do something. We can't do anything more.